There's a moment every night on college campuses across the country when thousands of students walk alone to their cars, believing they're safe enough to make it the rest of the way. Most of the time they are, but on March 4th of 2008, one Auburn University freshman made that same short walk, a walk that should have taken less than a minute, and disappeared into a nightmare that unfolded while her friends, her boyfriend, and her family unknowingly spoke to her for the final time. Because the man watching her in that parking lot wasn't just looking for a robbery. He was looking for a victim. Lauren Ashley Burk grew up in Marietta, Georgia, the daughter of Vivian and James Burk. She attended Walton High School before earning a place at Auburn University, where she studied graphic design and art, fields that she hoped would one day lead to a career in photography and marketing. But tragically, Lauren would never make it that far. Friends described Lauren as someone who was always smiling, always willing to help, and someone whose energy naturally drew people towards her. She was active in the Delta Gamma sorority, played lacrosse, and stayed busy balancing classes, friendships, and the early steps of building her future. And like many college freshmen, Lauren believed she had plenty of time ahead of her to graduate, start her career, and build the life that she wanted with her longtime boyfriend, Sean McQuaid. But on March 4th, 2008, a single encounter with a stranger would end those plans in just a matter of minutes. Lauren didn't know it at the time, but she was about to meet a rather strange man, a man who would shake up her otherwise amazing life. The man in question is 23-year-old Courtney Lockhart. Not much is known about his childhood other than the fact that he was an ordinary, nice, and cheerful guy who was living a normal life. But that would soon change for the worse, and it started with Courtney joining the US military in 2003. He was deployed to Iraq as well as South Korea for a year, and when he came back in 2005, he just wasn't the same anymore. His family, friends, and people around him noticed a drastic change in his personality. He'd freak out at the most minor inconveniences, and he also abused illegal substances from time to time. We don't know much about what happened during his time in the Army, but what we do know is that he was arrested for threatening other soldiers and using illegal substances in 2006. He would also disappear without taking an official leave of absence, and other soldiers were never safe around him. He ended up spending months in confinement, and in the end, he was dishonorably discharged from the military in 2006. He also had a daughter with an ex-girlfriend, and he was allowed to see her from time to time, but by the time 2006 hit, he was seriously spiraling out of control. He refused to meet with his daughter, didn't take care of his personal hygiene, and his temper would go through the roof for no reason at all. It was not long before he took a nosedive into the world of crime. He'd normally commit burglaries and carjackings, and it all started in 2008, and his MO, if you will, was to approach and overpower his victims from behind. He mostly chose female victims, as he thought they were defenseless, and he could lurk in the dark and wait for the perfect opportunity. He was armed most of the time, and he would subdue the women, steal their purse, cash, and any other valuables, and sometimes rob the women and then flee in their car too, leaving the victims stranded, shaken, and fearful. Courtney was not a good man. He was kicked out of the Army, deep in a pit of addiction, and had no interest in putting his life back together and turning things around. He was fueled by anger. Courtney was spiraling out of control, and robbing people was becoming a habit for him. And sadly, a fateful encounter with a complete stranger would end in total tragedy, and Lauren would be on the receiving end of it all. It was the fateful day of March 4th, 2008, and Lauren had a wonderful start to her day. She had breakfast at a cafe with her boyfriend Sean, and the two went on about how their days would go. Lauren had classes, and then she had plans to study at the library and run some errands. So around 11 a.m., Lauren went to her class at Auburn, and after that, she had a conversation over the phone with her dad. Now, Lauren had plans to visit her family back in Georgia for spring break, and the two discussed all the things Lauren had to get done over spring break. In short, it was a pretty basic call between a father and a daughter. Then after classes, Lauren went back to Sean's dorm where she spent the rest of the evening. At around 8:30, she headed out for the library, and she had plans to study with a fellow student named Michael. So she got up, got her bag, and headed down to the parking area where her car, a 2001 Honda Civic, was parked. Sean saw Lauren leaving in the dark towards her car, and sadly, it would be the last time he would ever see her again, because little did Lauren or Sean know there was someone else lurking around in that campus parking lot, looking for the perfect victim to burglarize. It was none other than Courtney. We don't know the specifics of what he was doing throughout the day, but according to what he told investigators later on, Courtney was lurking inside the campus all day long, even leaving at one point when he saw a patrol car, but later returned and resumed whatever he was doing beforehand. When darkness took over, he spotted a lone woman walking to her car in the parking lot. It was tragically Lauren. This was when he saw his chance and he advanced towards her from behind, and he was also armed. He overpowered Lauren in order to get into her car. Lauren was obviously scared and frozen. This random man had just come up from behind and was pointing a weapon at her, so she felt she had no choice but to comply. She got into the passenger seat, and Courtney got behind the wheel, and the two took off. In the process, she gave him whatever cash she had and pleaded with him to leave her alone. But Courtney didn't do that. Now, he took the money all right, and the rest of Lauren's belongings, like her iPod and other things, but that wasn't all that he took. Lauren was sitting in the passenger seat, scared and anxious, because not only had Courtney just abducted her in her own car, but he also kept pointing his weapon at her, with one hand and keeping his other hand on the wheel. But things were about to get even worse. Courtney drove Lauren around, and at one point he ordered her to get rid of her clothes. Well, in Lauren's mind, if she did what Courtney said and didn't agitate him too much, maybe he'd let her go. Meanwhile, Courtney's thought process of making Lauren disrobe was so she couldn't jump out of the car or attempt to do something crazy. It's just unbelievable. He drove Lauren around for about 30 minutes, and they passed by many bars, restaurants, and public places, but Lauren couldn't do anything to signal someone for help. Courtney was right beside her, and he could be very unpredictable, so Lauren had no choice but to just let this ride end. During the drive, Courtney decided that it was a good time to rant to Lauren about his life, misfortunes, and unemployment. According to Courtney, Lauren tried to appease him by assuring him that she'd help him find a job. But according to Courtney's confession, Lauren had told him that she knew of someone who would help him get a job if he'd just let her go. Lauren was trying to keep Courtney calm and distract him, and she thought that sympathizing with him and offering him help would eventually cause him to let her go. But that plan backfired. Courtney, instead of feeling thankful and understood, felt angry and irritated. But then all of a sudden, Lauren's phone rang. It was her friend Michael. If you remember, Lauren had a planned study session with Michael at the library, but right now, she was essentially abducted by a random and dangerous person. But Courtney allowed Lauren to pick up the phone, but he ordered her to make up a story, which she did. She picked up the phone, and right away Michael asked where she was, to which Lauren replied she forgot all about their study session and she had to cancel. And after this, she just abruptly hung up on Michael. At one point, Sean even called Lauren, and she made up another story and hung up on him too. Looking back, both Sean and Michael are riddled with grief that they didn't figure out that something was wrong with Lauren at that time. But in hindsight, there definitely was. After 30 minutes, Courtney started to feel his anger and frustration build up. And when Lauren saw this, her fears reached new heights. And she went into fight or flight mode, and ultimately she chose flight. Lauren had one hand on the passenger door handle, and everything happened so fast. Lauren pulled the door open, turned her back, and proceeded to jump out of the car. And in the same instant, Courtney lifted his weapon and aimed it at a retreating Lauren. And unfortunately, he didn't miss. Lauren managed to leap from the car and onto the road, but she was gravely injured by both the impact and Courtney's weapon in the process. To put things into perspective, Courtney was driving down Alabama Highway 147 between Lee Road 72 and US 280, and Lauren, still without her clothes, landed on the side of the road. And meanwhile, Courtney made a run for it in Lauren's car and didn't look back. It was around 9:17 p.m. at this point, and after gravely injuring Lauren, leaving her on the side of the road to fend for herself and stealing her cash and car, Courtney went to a nearby Chevron gas station and, get this, used Lauren's credit card to buy gasoline. But he wasn't done yet. He then went to the same place where he abducted Lauren from Auburn University and made a beeline for Hinton Field parking lot. And there he doused her car with gasoline that he had just bought, but not before stealing her iPod, some cash, and a credit card. He then set the car ablaze and left the scene in his own vehicle. But that's not all. He then used Lauren's credit card again to buy more gas for his own car on Interstate 85, and finally used it one more time in LaGrange before tossing it out of the car and returning to Alabama as if nothing had happened. But back on Alabama Highway 147, several cars had stopped after hearing loud banging sounds and seeing a young woman jump from a car and stumble onto the side of the road. Lauren had enough strength in herself to flag people down for help, but she was barely holding on. Several people even saw the black Honda speeding away in the distance, and they even managed to see a man in the driver's seat. But at that moment, saving Lauren was top priority. Witnesses called emergency services immediately because Lauren was not in good shape. She was exposed, injured, and in a lot of pain from the fall. Paramedics arrived on the scene and they were racing against the clock to save Lauren. She was brought into East Alabama Medical Center at around 9:35 p.m., but unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries during treatment. Lauren Burk was only 18 years old when she lost her life at the hands of a complete stranger. This was just an ordinary, run-of-the-mill evening, and everything quickly went so wrong. Everyone was devastated. A young college student lost her life so suddenly. The police were called, but at that time, no one knew that it was even Lauren. So how did they find out? And how did Lauren's parents find out? Well, the police responded to another call about a car catching fire at Auburn University. Officers were dispatched, and as soon as the firefighters got there, the fire was extinguished. The officers examined the car, and they found just one thing: a single spent bullet under the driver's seat. That was all they had besides the car's license plate. So the police decided to run the plates to see whose car this was, and it was reported stolen. It turns out that this car was registered to a man named James Burk, Lauren's dad. So the police called James and notified him about his car being found charred and abandoned at the Auburn University parking lot. His heart quite literally dropped. After this phone call, James called Lauren's friends to ask about her whereabouts, and no one had seen her since after 8:30 p.m. on March 4th. This worried James to no end, so he drove to Auburn, where he was ultimately notified that a young girl was found on Alabama 147 and taken to the hospital. James then went to that hospital, where he was given the devastating news. Lauren's dad was the one who had to formally identify her body, and that's something no parent should ever have to go through. This news eventually reached Sean, Michael, and other friends of Lauren's. Even though we know who did this to Lauren, the police still needed to get to the bottom of this mystery and find Lauren's killer. So they started by sending the car for examination and talking to the people who were closest to Lauren. They wanted to compile a suspect list and figure out who could have done this to her. Since her credit card and cash were missing, the police thought that it might have been a robbery gone wrong, so they checked her bank activity. And lo and behold, it had been used. If you remember, Courtney used the card twice after Lauren had jumped out of the car. So all that was left was for the police to find who the card's user was. But before they could do that though, Courtney was out and wreaking more havoc. His robberies continued, and with each passing day, his methods were escalating too. A day after Lauren's attack, on March 5th, Courtney robbed a woman in a nursing home parking lot in LaGrange, Georgia. On March 6th, Courtney proceeded to rob a woman by threatening her and her 3-year-old son in Columbus, Georgia. His victims included women in their 20s, and his methods were escalating and getting intense and scary with each crime. But on March 7th, 3 days after the attack on Lauren, Courtney would finally be stopped. See, on that day, Courtney robbed a 72-year-old woman in a Walmart parking lot, which shows his rapid escalation. He didn't even hesitate to attack a defenseless elderly woman. This just shows his desperation for money and something dark. But luckily, a witness saw the attack on the woman go down, and this left Courtney with no choice but to leave the lady and her car and flee in his own vehicle. Little did Courtney know, though, that the witness had already called the cops. Back at the police station, officers had just gotten a call from someone trying to mug an elderly woman at a local Walmart. This man was in his 20s and was getting away in a silver Chrysler Sebring. This was Courtney Lockhart, and he was close to getting caught, but it wasn't going to be easy. This started a chase on the road. The police were catching up to Courtney on that road, who was speeding recklessly. He even threw something out of his window, and a couple officers went to retrieve that object, and it was his weapon. the same one that was used on Lauren. Meanwhile, Courtney was still fleeing from the police when his car broke down. But that didn't stop him either. He continued to flee on foot and went into a nearby wooded area to try to lose the police, but they were onto him. And finally, after what felt like forever, Courtney was caught, and he was handcuffed by officers. Once Courtney was in the police's hands, his car was checked, and inside the car, the police found Lauren's iPod and cell phone, and they also found a t-shirt mottled with red stains and more shell casings. When Courtney was arrested, the firearm and ammunition were tested, and it was confirmed that Lauren had been attacked with that same weapon. They also confirmed that the iPod and cell phone found with Courtney were Lauren's. Now, the police knew for sure that Courtney was the one who attacked Lauren, but they needed answers from the perpetrator himself. Surprisingly, Courtney didn't resist the interrogation too much, and he confessed to robbing and attacking Lauren, as well as the other robberies and crimes before and after that. He also gave a play-by-play of what happened when he targeted Lauren. How he forced her into his car, how he drove around while keeping her hostage, how he ordered her to answer all of her incoming calls at that time, and he ultimately attacked her as she tried to escape from the car, and even what he did to her car after the fact. So everything that I just told you now was actually his version of events. But he stressed that he didn't attack Lauren intentionally, nor did he have any perverse motives in mind when he abducted Lauren. We don't really know for sure why he did what he did to Lauren, and what sick motives he may have had, but the outcome is still the same. Lauren was innocent. She was largely defenseless, and she lost her life in a very tragic way at the hands of Courtney. Eventually, Courtney was indicted for murder during the commission of a robbery, murder during the commission of a kidnapping, and serious assault charges were added to the list too. He pleaded not guilty, though, by reason of insanity. See, Courtney was evaluated by a defense psychologist, and even though he wasn't formally diagnosed with PTSD at this point, the psychologist did find some PTSD-related symptoms due to his time in the military and what he had seen and gone through. The same defense psychologist also testified at the trial that Courtney was immature and had poor judgment, and an IQ of just 86. The trial was held on November 2nd of 2010, almost 2 years following Lauren's attack and subsequent passing in Lee County, and it garnered immense media coverage. The prosecution believed that Courtney abducted Lauren with the intent to take advantage of her, and attacked her when she tried to fight him off and escape from the vehicle. The prosecution wanted to include all Courtney's wrongdoings during his time in the military, but the judge wouldn't allow it. On the other hand, the defense argued that the attack on Lauren was purely accidental, and that Courtney was mentally unstable and shaken from his traumas in the military. As far as I'm concerned, Courtney must have endured trauma in the military, no argument there. But he inarguably caused trauma as well to all of his victims, and most of all, Lauren's family and loved ones. After the trial ended, the jury deliberated for 6.5 hours and came back with their verdict. Courtney was acquitted of the attempted assault charge, but was found guilty of robbery, kidnapping, and capital murder. The judge wanted to sentence him to life in prison without parole, but the presiding judge, Judge Walker, instead imposed the death penalty on him after finding out about Courtney's criminal history. So on March 11, 2011, Courtney was sentenced to death and sentenced to Holman Correctional Facility to wait on death row. He and his attorneys did appeal the conviction and filed multiple petitions from 2013 to 2017. Hearings were held following these petitions, but the death penalty was upheld. He's currently on death row, and Lauren's parents are willing to fight till the end to ensure that it stays that way. In the aftermath of this case, Lauren's family filed a claim against Auburn University, urging them to reestablish a campus police force. The reason why Courtney, or anyone really, was able to enter campus premises without any hindrance was that the university didn't really have any level of security. This campus was literally less secure than a supermarket parking lot. Literally anyone could just wander up and wander in. There's no real word on whether the school ever reinstated these security protocols though, but let's just hope that they did. The university later honored Lauren by establishing a scholarship for design major freshmen in her name. Obviously, this gesture did nothing to heal the wound left behind by Courtney, but at least it's a great way to help the community remember Lauren in the future that could have been. Lauren's family lost their 18-year-old daughter so suddenly and inexplicably, and this loss still weighs heavily on their hearts. Sean lost the one love of his life overnight and permanently. And I just hope that Lauren's loved ones are doing okay, because no one deserves to go through the same ordeal that they went through. What happened to Lauren was an act of darkness. But we have to remember, darkness doesn't get the final word. The light still shines. Injustice being served, and the lives of those changed for the better thanks to Lauren's scholarship fund, and in the way Lauren's story continues to be remembered, even after all this time.